Hi everyone, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur. I hope that you're doing well. I'd like in this video to discuss a triptych of spy novels I've read this year. One I absolutely loved, and that is The Labyrinth Makers by Anthony Price. This is the first in his Audley and Butler, I believe, series. I've only read this one, and Dr. Audley was the main character in this one, but I understand that Colonel Butler is going to be an important presence in future novels. I loved this book. I thought it was a very well-written spy novel. It was published in 1970, and Price takes sort of an interesting window into espionage fiction. Dr. Audley, the key character in this book, is explicitly not a spy. He's a researcher. He's an academic who prepares, papers on what different foreign governments could be planning, and that's his value to the intelligence community in the UK. He's not a field agent. He's as far from it as can be. And from what I understand with the Labyrinth Makers, one of the hallmark of the Audley Butler series by Price is that there's often in sort of a historical or archaeological aspect that links to some modern espionage issue. So here it's a plane that as the marshlands and the fens are drained to provide more land for agriculture, for housing and such, they find a plane, a World War II era plane that's been missing, and they find a pilot, the pilot's body in there. And so that in itself is interesting, but why on earth would the Soviet Union have a KGB agent who's curious about this and people who are looking for it? And as they start to investigate it, why are people being murdered? There are qualities to the book that are really interesting. It drops right in, and it's a very quick read. I read it over a single weekend and really did enjoy this. I will be reading more of these. I picked up like 5 of them for about $1.50 each at a used bookshop. So I'm looking forward to reading more because there is a voice here that I really appreciated. The quality of Audley as this guy who just is not quite there in terms of the field work, but is constantly able to put connections together and think his way through situations, is a really interesting quality to the book. There's a George Smiley-esque quality to Audley's character, but he's not this hyper manipulative person who's a spy master. He's a guy who, because of his academic background, makes interesting connections. And so I really did enjoy this. I'll just read from one portion. Nothing was certain. That was the trouble. All he had was an elaborate house of cards built on only partially interlocking theories. But as he drove back to the office, Audley felt fairly satisfied. He had set things moving for which he did not have to account to Stalker. Jake would dig further out of sheer curiosity, and anything Theodore turned up could be cross-checked in the Berlin files as well as the London ones. If only he had one good, hard fact to convince himself that it was all worthwhile. And so there's a human quality to the relationships as well here. We see different characters maneuvering against each other, and one thing I appreciate is the relationship and partnership that has to develop between Faith, the daughter of the pilot who had died, and David Audley, and how they interact with each other throughout the book. I thought was written in an interesting way. There's also a great Tolkien Lord of the Rings Easter egg in here for folks who are interested. So let me know if you've read The Labyrinth Makers. As I said, I really enjoyed this one. I'm going to be looking forward to reading more of Price's series. Another one I read was The Defection of A.J. LeWinter by Robert Littell, published in 1973. So not only the height of the Cold War, but towards the end of the Vietnam War for the U.S. And I believe this is, as far as I can tell, Littell's first novel. I think he's much more famous for his monstrous The Company, which examines whole decades of the CIA. But The Defection of A.J. LeWinter is interesting, so I would say for 2 features. One is that Littell is trying to figure out what type of writer he is. So we have this character, Leo Diamond, who is a disgraced operative who is now going to be charged with coming up with a plot to convince the Soviet Union that A.J. LeWinter is a fake defector so that they won't take him seriously as a real defector, because that would involve millions of dollars expense in shifting the U.S. missile system that they're developing. The Leo Diamond character doesn't quite work. He's very hard-nosed. he's a ruthless character. He's got an edge to him, a sense that, you know, he should have been a more successful operative, but he was betrayed by some folks who were bureaucrats, and this is his chance to show them what's what. But I don't know that that's a character that Littell really believes in. I think there's something that feels almost 1980s, frankly, about Leo Diamond. I realize the book was written well before the 80s, but Leo Diamond is a character that would be much more at home in the fiction of the 1980s, or in a film or something. He doesn't quite work on the page. Littell's much more effective when he's describing this other side, which is this documentary side. So there are whole portions of the book that are transcripts of interviews of people trying to research LeWinter from the US and from the Soviet Union. There are all of their interviews. There are different letters that have been passed. There are communiques. And so there are all of these documents that amass throughout the course of the book that lend it this air of verisimilitude that then, of course, runs stark against what's happening with the Leo Diamond narration. The plot that they contrive is interesting. It's clever, and it's interesting. And there is a very dark quality to the narration, a very not quite nihilistic quality to the narration. But Leo Diamond as a character is so utterly ruthless that Littell allows the book to follow in that direction in a way that I think some writers would be afraid to. This isn't necessarily a book that's all about winning and, you know, the good guys winning or something like that. It is a book that deals with loss or with betrayal and what are the human consequences of that. So there's something about the book that is very effective. I think if the Leo Diamond character was just dialed back a little bit, he's too much a man of action and too cerebral as a man of action to wholly be believable, I think. So, but I do look forward to reading more Littell books, perhaps The Company, but perhaps a different one. So let me know if you've read this one. Again, if you have a favorite by Littell. And if you have read Antony Price, let me know if you have a favorite in this series. I picked up a couple from the beginning, but a couple from the middle as well. I'd be curious to know if anybody is a big fan of this series and has a favorite novel within that. And then finally, I'd like to talk very briefly about A Spy in Winter by Michael Hastings. I read this book with my wife. It was published in 1984, and the key character here is a character named Orloff, who is apparently the KGB spy master who was running Kim Philby and the Cambridge Five. That's an incredible plot. I mean, it's the plot that powered John le Carre's career, in a sense. He, having been betrayed by Philby, he would later write Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And this is a book that seeks to sort of be this Tinker Tailor type book, getting at the same theme, but a decade later, bringing the Soviet spy who had been running them and then had defected back out of the cold to now try and draw out, is there some other agent going on? Was there some other secret agent who was this extra layer of double agent running going on that even Philby and Orloff himself were unaware of? And so that's something that, again, powered Len Deighton's Bernard Sampson trilogy and subsequent books. But the difference is that Michael Hastings struggles to get the characters off of the page. There are some moments that are mysterious, particularly at the beginning. The book is mysterious as a couple of characters are killed who were giving interviews and who had seemed to be connected in some way to this potential other agent. But as the book continues, Orloff, as this sort of retired spy who's had to come out of retirement to, prove himself in a sense, and save his own neck. And the reporters who had brought him over from the U.S. to the U.K. to do some interviews, and that's how he's here. Those different interactions, they never quite gel into something that is worth the story at the core of A Spy in Winter. This book has a great idea at its heart. Hastings just isn't quite there and taking it to a conclusion that is satisfying or logical. It's not a bad book. But it's also not one where I'm really excited to read more novels by Michael Hastings. We'll see. I don't know if you've read anything else by this writer. I didn't even really see a lot of more books by him, but if you have, let me know if there's one that's better. So again, these are three from my sort of Spy TBR for 2025. And as I said, the Labyrinth Makers was fantastic. I really encourage folks to read this book. So hope everyone's doing well. Thank you.